In the very third episode of Undead Unluck, we find out that in the world these characters live in, only the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon exist. It's a reveal that comes at the tail end of the episode, and while it goes out of its way to establish this beforehand, it's something that doesn't really click until they outright tell you. A good chunk of the episode takes place at night, and while the moon is visible, there is a not so noticeable lack of stars, something you might pass off as a stylistic choice done by the anime studio, David Production, so it doesn't really register in your brain. Learning this fact also comes with the painful realization that in this world, throughout the vast expanse of nothingness they call space, the people of Earth are the only ones who inhabit it, showing just how lonely their existence really is. I consider Undead Unluck to be a painfully underrated series, despite coming onto Shonen Jump in 2020, lasting all the way to 2025 with an anime adaptation following suit in 2023, the series has just never been able to really break into the mainstream. Rarely do I ever see it being brought up in discussions online, and I can sort of see why, to be honest. The first couple of arcs are kind of rough and fail to leave a strong impression on its viewers, coupled with the fact that the power system was pretty out there and unconventional, meant it had a lot to sell you to get invested. But if you did manage to stick through those first few arcs, not only were you treated to some pretty creative action, you'd also meet some very insane world building, along with characters that, while not all that complex, were written with so much love behind them that you can't help but be invested. And while most of the series is chaotic and zany, with each episode raising the stakes further and further, there is a strong melancholy that follows the story which ties into the themes of loneliness and overcoming it. The first episode sets this up perfectly, introducing us to Fuko, a young woman who, after finishing her favorite manga series, has come to accept that she has nothing to live for anymore and attempts to take her own life. Fuko is what they call a negator, someone who, as the name implies, negates the very rules of the universe, from the laws of physics to more abstract things and concepts. Each negator is unique with vastly different conditions for activation. Fuko negates luck. She's on luck. When someone comes in contact with her skin, they get hit with some kind of bad luck, with its severity depending on how much she likes the person. She unknowingly awoke to this power at a very young age, which led to the death of her parents and 200 other people, and over the course of a couple of years came to understand her power, and in order to protect those around her, isolated herself, living as a shut-in for 10 years, with her youth passing her by. That is until she meets fellow negator Undead, whom she nicknames Andy. Andy can't die and has been alive for so long that the only thing he desires now is the sweet release of death. After coming in contact with Fuko's Unluck, he figures she's the best he has at permanently putting an end to his immortal life. From then on, things barrel into insanity as they find themselves part of an organization of negators called Union, who wants to save their world marching towards its inevitable end by killing God. If I've somehow gotten you interested in checking this series out, I strongly recommend you do so, because from this point there will be light spoilers for all of Season 1, as well as the Winter Arc special that came out last year. As I stated earlier, overcoming loneliness is at the core of this series that can be seen in the very nature of its power system. Negators by design are people whose power takes away a bit of their humanity without their consent. In an instant, a normal person gets an ability that either affects them or those around them, completely changing their life, often making it worse, subjecting them to pain and tragedy. It's a cruel trick played by their god to further isolate them, as when their world gets hit with a punishment or reward for either failing or completing a quest, such as the unification of all languages or the very introduction of the galaxy, the world and the people who inhabit it all course correct to live like these things have always existed. However, negators are the only ones exempt from this, as they still remain the same with memories from before the change. They become very estranged from reality, which means that if they do not have the means to catch up, they end up being further alienated. Most of the negators we see have gone through some kind of suffering brought forth by their powers, and we get to watch how their abilities shape the way they think, as well as the way they view and interact with the world. Take Tatiana, Untouchable, for example. After receiving her power at the age of 5, killing her parents in the process, she lost the ability to eat like a normal person, as well as physically feel things since the barrier she's surrounded by prevents anything from getting close to her. So the young girl who wanted to die as atonement for the death of her parents is saved by Union and goes on to get especially close to other Union members, Billy and Gina. Because she's someone who cannot get physically close to others, she cherishes the little emotional connections she has with other people and takes it especially hard when one of them dies. Then there's Juice, Injustice, whose power lets her force the targets within her vision to act in a way that is contrary to their beliefs and ideas of justice. It's an overwhelming power, but what it really does is make it difficult for her to see and accept the views of others since her power makes her idea of justice absolute. Coupled with the weight that comes with leadership and being dubbed the strongest, she's isolated on a more idealistic plane, a la lonely at the top type shit. But then we have Fuko and Andy, our main characters whose loneliness contrasts each other. Fuko was forced to isolate herself for 10 years. Since she can't turn off her ability, she saw this as the only way to keep the people around her safe, but she didn't want that. Fuko yearned to live life and experience the same things normal people did, and wished to form connections with others. However, all she could do was live vicariously through her favorite shoujo manga. To her, she was stuck in one place with no way of ever changing. Andy, on the other hand, has lived for so long, he's become desensitized to most of life's experiences. He's just about seeing everything life has to offer, and so nothing really matters to him anymore. And one of the first things to not matter to him are the connections he forms with other people. Because he has been forced to part with so many people in his painfully long life, he doesn't see a reason to stick around others for too long because he knows that in the end he will be left alone, so he chooses to accept the isolation and revel in it. These two loneliness represent two sides of the same coin. Fuko is alone because connection is dangerous, while Andy is alone because connection is meaningless, which is why they're drawn to each other. Fuko meets someone who her unlock doesn't faze, giving her the opportunity to finally form a meaningful connection, and Andy finds new purpose in sticking by Fuko and keeping her safe until they're able to finally kill him. Though they don't immediately warm up to each other. At first, Fuko wants nothing to do with him, afraid of the rapid change her life is taking with next to no inputs from her, and Andy only sees Fuko as a means to an end, but by the third episode they really come around for each other, and as the series goes on, we watch these two grow as individuals while becoming such an endearing couple with some well-written romance that doesn't feel half-baked or shafted, as is the norm with most shonen. So, what is Undead Unluck's answer to loneliness? Circling back to the third episode, we see Fuko as well as another character, Gina, who will be important in a bit, engage in some landscape painting. Fuko's painting of the landscape has the moon accompanied with little sparkles around it, commenting on how lonely the moon looked up there, and so decided to give it friends, much to the surprise of Gina. This is one of the anime's answers: community. Finding the people who accept you for you is a beautiful thing. These people, through the organization literally called Union, find a support system that helps them be the people they were meant to be, a found family of sorts. However, the series doesn't put the answer to loneliness solely on the shoulders of the community who accept the individual, but also shows that the individual need to accept change and allow themselves to grow if they truly want to overcome the loneliness within them and find the place they belong. This is most apparent in Fuko. Meeting Andy sets her on the course to changing for the better, from refusing to accept whatever the immortal man wanted from her, to learning to be more accommodating and being there for him however she could. She comes to learn how to accept she is changing, as well as love the person she is slowly becoming. It's through this change that she was able to sit and paint with Gina, or reach out and take the initiative in befriending Tatiana. She grows from a nervous shut-in to a capable member of Union and even pulls her own weight when it comes to battles. It would have been so easy for her to go down the wrong path if not for the right support, and what that would have looked like is seen in the character of Gina, Unchanged. Gina is the very antithesis of Fuko's character. With a negator ability that prevents things from changing, and an appearance that hides her true age, she hates the idea of change and would rather have everything remain the same forever. It's why I think she fell in love with Andy when she captured him 50 years prior to the start of the series. Being immortal is the ultimate form of unchanging, since his body remains the same regardless, but she fails to see that Andy is someone who can change as a person. Her disdain for change means she is never willing to change her perspective. Even when she acknowledges something that makes sense, she still refuses to accept it simply because it means changing. This is why she has a strong dislike for Fuko, who willingly accepts change. Gina's aversion to change also means she's stuck in the past, unable to grow and accept things as they are, unlike Fuko who lives for the future, ever changing. Undead Unluck takes the negators of the world, people who were forced into loneliness, and turns that isolation into a form of rebellion against the awful hand they've been dealt with by powers that far exceed their own. It turns something that was meant to punish them for no apparent reason into the strength to bring real change in the world, and I think that's what makes the series really special. That will be it for this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and as always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.